The Johannesburg water woes are sadly nothing new for its residents. After years of frustration, residents from various areas have launched a petition calling on government and the Joburg Council to urgently provide a plan to resolve the crisis. For more on this, let's now speak to Tessa from the Johannesburg Crisis Alliance. Tessa, a very good evening to you and thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps just give us an overview with regards to the water crisis that has affected communities in Johannesburg and particularly the marginalized and low-income areas. What are the most pressing issues that they are encountering?
Well, I think that we can all say that across Joburg, there's been many issues around water. We've seen a number of issues around just water cuts that are irregular, that are based on poor maintenance and poor infrastructure. And so residents are routinely told that they live in high-lying areas. And therefore, when there are issues with maintenance or there are issues with low levels in the reservoirs, that water simply can't come to them. But at the same time, water tankers are not being delivered on schedule and are not being delivered in an equitable way. And there's a lot of talk about water tankers that are supposed to be coming in and giving support in times that there are maintenance issues or infrastructure issues or low water levels that are either being beholden to criminal syndicates or the tender system where people are getting tenders for water that they can't deliver on, or there being too few water tankers. And that's been a big issue, especially around areas like the Lenasia South area, but also Coronationville. Then we also have just issues, particularly in a number of informal settlements, where there are these tussles back and forth between the city of Joburg and residents that are desperately trying to get water. And these are not informal settlements that have just come up today. We're talking about a settlement like Freedom Park that has been around for about 20 years, where you see residents, this is a more formalized establishment now or settlement now. But you see that people are not getting access to water. You see that people are not being able to even get the JoJo tanks that they have put up filled by the city of Joburg, and the city doesn't have a plan for formalizing the water systems into these areas. And while one might say, well, why are people in these informal settlements? Because we've got a housing crisis on top of a water crisis. But even so, everybody has a right to water. Water is a human right. And so we must ensure that everybody, particularly marginalized people who are sitting in a high inequality situation, a high unemployment situation, a housing crisis, and are trying to fend for themselves in largely informal settlements, are also given water. And then we also just have a generalized issue around there's leaks in the city of Joburg. We are losing about 40% of available water to leaks that go unfixed, that don't get attended to, especially when they burst out. And then we're also told that there's the water that comes from the city of Joburg is coming from the Lesotho area, and that there's delays in the project that is supposed to be expanding that dam. And so we just have a multiplicity of issues that the city of Joburg is simply not addressing. And a big part of that is that they are not just fulfilling their duties, their fiduciary duties. The fiscus is not being used correctly. Just last year, we have two stats. One is that Joburg Water was given 1 billion rand from the city of Joburg, yet the city of Joburg collected 12 billion rand from people who are paying for water. And so there's an undersupply of finances to the establishment that's supposed to be delivering on water. And at the same time, the city of Joburg returned back 1.2 billion rand to the national grant in infrastructure money that was supposed to be spent on infrastructure. So we have all of these problems, but we also know that the root cause is poor management and poor leadership in the city of Joburg.
And I think that certainly was my next question to you, to say, what do you really think is the fundamental issue here? Is it an issue of incompetency? Is it a lack of will? Is it a lack of resources from the city of Joburg?
Well, certainly it's a combination of all of those things. I mean, one of the issues I haven't mentioned yet is the billing crisis. And yesterday we had a gathering of over 300 residents at the city of Joburg from 40 different communities and civic organizations. And what we heard a lot about was poor billing. So even where people have access and are willing to pay for water services, they're getting bills that make no sense. They're getting bills that are bloated. And that is a billing issue that is, again, about the management of the city. So we know that the city doesn't have its in-house capacities. It has externalized all of its capacities into these entities, and Joburg Water is one of them. What we've seen in the last few years is an explosion in the boards of these entities, but not with people who have the competencies that are necessary to run these entities. These entities have become highly politicized, and they've become captured by political interests. So we're not seeing that the requisite skills are sitting in these entities, and we're not seeing that the political will to make sure that these entities run effectively and held accountable. There's no oversight from the politicians. So you have poor entities that are not being well managed. They're not being given the resources they need. They don't have the competent staff. They're politicized. And on the other hand, you have councillors that barely know what's going on, Section 79 committees that are supposed to do oversight that are dysfunctional, and you have really a city executive that is flat-footed at every turn. I've been to community meetings where the city management and the executives come into those meetings and really have nothing to tell the city of Johannesburg residents, except to say that they're willing to listen to their complaints, but really no urgent plan of action on something as crucial as the life and death issue of water provision.
So the residents of Phumla Mqashi marched to the Ennerdale Joburg water offices, and I think in a December response, there's an article on Ground Up, and the department simply says that some communities have been provided with infrastructure, and this infrastructure has led to the mushrooming of illegal connections. How do you suggest government balance between the supply of giving such an essential good, like you said, which is water, together with ensuring that there is some kind of revenue collection from those non-paying communities?
Well, there's two parts to this. One is that there's a regulation that governs this, that every person, regardless of their income bracket, should be able to get at least 50 liters of water per day per household. And so that is a regulation regardless of how much you earn. Therefore, the city has an imperative to make sure that the infrastructure is there and that people don't need to illegally connect to get the bare minimum of water. People are not asking to fill their swimming pools in Phumla Mqashi. They're not asking to put water on their golf estates. People are asking for the minimum provision that is provided for by law. And so that's the first starting point. So when people get desperate enough to do illegal connections, the first thing that is done is those connections are then shut down. But when it comes to big industry that is wasting water, when it comes to suburban areas where water is wasted, nobody goes there. Nobody is disconnecting anyone who's actually going above the restrictions, because there are levels of restrictions that are already applicable in the city of Joburg that no one listens to in the upper ends. But when it comes to people who are literally doing these things as a matter of life and death, based on the fact that we do have regulations in place that says that there's a minimum amount that everybody is due, then we don't get that. And the city of Joburg also needs to account for the fact that it's indigent register. It's a register of people who should be getting free basic services, because that's also a constitutional imperative, that there are free basic services for people who earn below 1,200 Rand as a household. The indigent register in this city is completely dysfunctional. It is it's incomplete. And so the city doesn't even know how many people it should be giving those kind of provisions to in terms of basic services, but is very quick to jump in and criminalize people for doing something that they should actually be doing, which is providing basic services.
So Tessa, yourselves as the Joburg Crisis Alliance with 7 other organizations have put together a petition calling on government, especially the Joburg Council, to urgently resolve the water crisis. What are you asking for?
So just first, it's not only 7 organizations. These are, yesterday we met with 40 civic organizations across the city. And so what is building is a coalition of different organizations in different communities. And the things that we are asking for is for the city to just do its job. Firstly, for there to be an accounting for, in terms of the money that should be spent on infrastructure, where an audit of all the infrastructure projects that are happening, the fixing of all of the leaks in the city of Joburg, and a comprehensive plan to do that, and ensuring that the water tankers that are currently on tender get insourced and are properly managed by the city of Joburg, by Joburg Water itself, as opposed to in the hands of entrepreneurs who may do whatever they want with it once they have those tenders. And then to ensure that that minimum provision that is provided for is ensured to all residents at all times. There's a communication failure in the city of Joburg, and we have to make sure that the city starts to tell residents exactly what it is that is going on, why they are underspending, why they are not fixing the leaks, why we are in a situation where the city of Joburg is simply just allowing high levels of incompetence, and in some cases, it would seem criminality to take place.
All right, Tessa, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. That's Tessa Dooms, representing the Johannesburg Crisis Alliance, speaking on behalf of many residents with regards to the looming water crisis.